working with recently?
Yeah, so that family in particular out in Manicodic. Manicodic is a town, it's about 15 miles from Dillingham, but there's no roads between Dillingham and Manicodic. So most people snow machine between the towns. When there's two rivers, when those rivers are frozen over, you can snow machine between them if you know where you're going. By now there's like tracks from all the way across, so you could probably make it even if you didn't know where you're going. But you can either do that or you can fly. We've flown, we'll probably snow machine next time, I don't know, we'll see. But we've flown the last couple times we've gone out there. So there's that Adams family, and one of their sons in the last year or so has become very interested spiritually and started reading a lot of the Bible and Mrs. White and Amazing Facts and ordering all kinds of books and listening to sermons and all that. And he's been sharing with his best friend, who's not an Adventist. He's a Christian, but he's not an Adventist. And actually, a couple friends, they've all been discussing the Bible together already since before I got up there. And so now we're continuing to work with them. So I definitely see that God's at work in Manicodic. And actually I have several leads that could potentially turn into Bible studies from Manicodic as well that I haven't followed up on all of them yet. But there's definitely a lot of spiritual interest in that village in particular.
You were telling me in the car when we came to pick you up that you had an interesting flight on the way home. What made it so interesting?
Oh yeah, so Dillingham, there's one, there's multiple commercial airlines in Dillingham, but there's one major commercial airline being Alaska Airlines. All the other ones are local commercial businesses. But Alaska Airlines flies in there once a day. They have one flight in a day if the weather's good. And so my flight, I was supposed to board on Monday, but that flight ended up being canceled because of bad weather. We could hear the guy flying over, but the clouds were at like 25 feet. So, and there's no instrument approach on our runway there, so you have to see the runway to land it, even in the big old jetliners. And so we could hear him going over, but he never did land, so he flew back to Anchorage. So nobody got out of Dillingham on Monday, but I went on Tuesday, and I got into the little Alaska Airlines building there. I'm sitting in the lobby, and the funny thing is with commercial flights out of Dillingham, like everybody in Dillingham knows everybody else in Dillingham, and the few villages around. So like everybody on the airline knows each other, which is, I've never ever experienced that before. But I mean, of course, I don't know them all yet, but I knew a few people, or I recognized some people. I got in there and I'm looking around and I see this guy sitting against one of the walls. I'm like, man, I recognize that guy from somewhere. I'm trying to remember where. And it took me a while, probably like 20 minutes or so. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if it's the best friend of this guy who's the Adventist guy who's sharing with him. I'm like, I think that's his best friend, David Blackstein. I'm like, oh, is it? And so I'm like, how would I figure out if it is without just like walking up to him and asking him? I'm like, oh, I guess I can look up his Facebook page. So I look up his Facebook page and I'm like trying to pull up pictures of him. And right as I like pull up his profile picture, he walks over and stands next to me. And so I don't know what like creepy. So I'm like, okay, close the Facebook page, put your phone back in my pocket. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that was him, but I don't know. So it turns out I was standing right next to his mom, and I didn't realize it. And she's talking to somebody else, and she's introducing him to this other person, and he's like, oh yeah, hi, and he says his name, and he says his name, and I'm like, oh, well, there we go, it's him. Okay, oh wow, oh, that's him. Okay, I hear you, God, okay, I gotta talk to him now. And then I see him on his backpack, says his name on it and everything else, I'm just like, okay, that's definitely him. So I waited for probably like a half hour or so when he quit talking to some other people and whatever, and chatted with him for a minute, and we'd met with once before, like a month before, and so I mentioned that, and we exchanged numbers, and we talked about possibly getting together to do some Bible studies and whatnot with his best friend, the Adventist guy. And so that was cool. And so he was on the same flight as me. We weren't sitting anywhere near each other in the airplane, but then I get in the plane, and it's the flight from Dillingham to Anchorage has one stop in King Salmon, which is another village about 18-minute flight from Anchorage in a Embraer 175. Not in our little 172, it's not an 18-minute flight, but it's just a hop over there. And so I'm sitting next to this other guy in the plane, and he's looking out the window or whatever. We're not really talking, but I can't remember, for some reason he's made some comment to me about something. I don't know if it was when we were on the ground in King Salmon or what. But anyways, I noticed though in the flight that he'd been reading something on his phone. It looked like the Bible app to me, but I was pretty sure it was. He makes that comment, kind of like breaks the silence. And so I was like, hey, what if I ask you, not to be like creepy, but what if I ask what you're reading on your phone? He's like, oh, it's Jimmy Swaggart. And I'm like, oh, hey, I'm a Christian too. Yeah, I thought it was the Bible. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I've been reading this guy for years, whatever. He's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely a Christian. Jesus has changed my life. If it wasn't for Jesus, I'd be in jail right now, and whatever else. And so we had a nice little chat there for a minute. But when we get done talking, the person behind me, I hear this voice says, hey, not to be nosy, but what was your name? I'm like, who, me? Oh, hi, I'm Kean Jagitsch. And she's like, do you know, and she says somebody from the Dillingham Church, a native lady. I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh yeah, we're trying to work it out. So I think she's the one I think you're the one she was talking about. Having you come see my son. I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, let's get in touch when I get back, So, by working connections on the Alaska Airlines flight. That was a new experience, never done that before, so.
Oh, that's super cool. So, what would you say to students here that maybe want to join Mission Track, but are a little bit afraid of their year of service? Is it worth it?
Your options are go back to school, or go get a lame job at Taco Bell, or fly airplanes in Alaska. That's pretty good. But it's definitely worth it. It's a lot of fun, and it's very, it's rewarding to be witnessing people and service, and it's not going to go always as you imagined, that's for sure. It's been, sometimes it's felt pretty slow, and other times, it's felt good, whatever, but I'd say it's definitely worth it, and this is an opportunity that you're not going to get anywhere else, for one thing. So I'd say thank you.
Amen. Well, thank you very much, Kean, for coming up here on the fly.